I got pregnant. She suddenly told me, claiming to be a close friend of a colleague. She says she's engaged to my fiancé. Losing my fiancé to a woman who couldn't work and made trouble. I left my job because it became uncomfortable to stay at the company. I never dreamed that a major turnaround in my life was waiting for me after that. My name is Jenny. I'm 28 years old. I work in the editorial department of a boys' comic at a certain publishing company. I hate to say it myself, but I'm fairly competent. I have 3 comic artists under my charge. One is a hitmaker who is the face of the magazine. One is a veteran with enthusiastic fans. And one is a promising newcomer who seems capable of carrying the magazine's future on their shoulders. They all trust me to handle their manuscripts. The basic job of an editor is to assist the comic artists and ensure the manuscript is completed by the deadline. I gather materials, deliver them to the workplace, and even encourage the assistants with snacks. Depending on the artist, I also help brainstorm ideas. I believe comic artists are professionals who create worlds with their own hands and give dreams and hopes to readers. Actually, I used to draw comics when I was a student. I had a dream of becoming a comic artist, but realizing I lacked the talent, I decided I wanted to help bring comics to the world instead and became an editor. Jenny really loves comics. Patrick says, a colleague and my boyfriend. We started dating about 2 years ago and are discussing getting married soon. So you could say he's pretty much my fiancé. It's not a 9 to 5 job. I often rush to my artists outside of regular hours, which makes it hard to sync up with the average salaried worker. That's why dating Patrick, who works in the same editorial job, is easy. Well, finding time for dates is still a challenge. Jenny, you're lucky with your assignments. Katie says, another colleague from the same batch. She originally worked as an editor for a girls' comic magazine. But the big-name female comic artist she was in charge of disliked her, so she moved departments. While comic artists can be difficult or eccentric, I think Katie was the problem in this case. She's always late, full of excuses, and quick to blame others. Still, she looks cute and seems shy and reserved. So someone thought she'd be better off handling male comic artists in a boys' comic magazine. For reasons that might raise eyebrows today. Maybe there's some luck, but I also put in the effort. I want to see good comics. Katie, do you even know your comic artist's favorite foods or hobbies? But I do bring trendy sweets and stuff. It's not about what's trendy. You have to bring what they actually like. Some people don't like sweets, you know. I went out of my way to line up and buy them, and he said, I don't like sweets. I told you that before, didn't I? Was that the chestnut cake you were eating the other day? You bought it because you wanted to eat it yourself. And just got something for them on the side. Prioritizing yourself over your comic artist, what's that about? It's not a big deal, right? It is a big deal. Buying something for yourself and then picking up something for comic artists as an afterthought. And using it as an excuse to line up during work hours. Come on, not everyone is as passionate about their work as you. Jenny, Patrick intervened. I felt down when I heard, I wish I had a cute girl like Katie as my editor. You are nice, Patrick. I didn't like their unserious attitude towards work. Since they are the only 3 colleagues who can still speak their minds to each other. Patrick, Katie and I often went out for drinks together. Katie claims to be a father complex, and her current boyfriend is nearly 20 years older than her. I've been drawn to older men ever since my dad passed away when I was little. They're kind and calm, and I just don't get girls who date guys their own age. Hey, are you really going to say that in front of us, a couple of the same age? Katie knows that Patrick and I are dating. For me, I can't imagine being with someone 20 years older. When I'm 50, he'll be 70, right? Too old for me. While joking like this, I felt somewhat relieved that Katie wouldn't become a rival in love. One day, when I was waiting to meet Patrick for a date, Katie called me saying she was feeling unwell and asked if I could pick up a manuscript in her place. I could have refused, but the comic artist Katie was in charge of was someone I had been a fan of since his debut. David Stone is a mid-30s male comic artist with talent, but has yet to produce a hit work. I contacted Patrick to cancel our date and went to pick up the manuscript. Huh? You're Jenny, right? What happened to the person in charge? I was happy that he remembered my name even though I've never been in charge of him. Katie is not feeling well, so I came to pick up the manuscript instead. She often seems unwell. Is she okay? Doesn't she have a weak constitution? I had never heard that Katie was frail. It seems she uses her health as an excuse to get out of requests. Hearing stories about messed up arrangements for autograph sessions, bringing fan letters that were 6 months old, or offering apple pie despite knowing the artist has an apple allergy made me frustrated. Last time, when I asked for photos of a ruin with an otherworldly atmosphere, she sent me a blurry photo she found on the internet. If that was all it took, I wouldn't have bothered asking. Hearing the artist sigh, I apologized on Katie's behalf and promised to speak sternly to her. He said something sad like, "Maybe my comic isn't popular, so that's why I'm treated coldly." To which I confessed, "I've been a fan of your work since your debut. I even buy the volumes to put on my bookshelf." He was delighted and said, "Really? Then, I'll draw your favorite character for you." And carefully drew my favorite character in my notebook. I was so happy I forgot about my anger towards Katie. Huh? But that artist is so analog. He wants analog materials and sends fan letters by postal mail, which is so weird. When I sternly warned her, far from being remorseful, Katie insisted she did nothing wrong. There are still many analog artists out there. Many fans take the time to write letters by hand. Don't do your job half-heartedly just because you find it bothersome. Jenny, you're scary. Listen. Our job is to help comic artists create good work. Providing them with allergenic food or bothering them doesn't just get in the way, it's harmful. But I didn't know. It can't be helped. That was a lie. Mr. Stone had said he informed her. Then Patrick joined the conversation. What's going on here? Why the tension? Katie, without even shedding tears, made a crying face and whined to Patrick in a spoiled voice.
Aww.
Patrick. Jenny is being so harsh. Katie, did you make another careless mistake? This isn't about being careless or clumsy. I'm talking about her attitude towards work. We don't need an editor who causes trouble for comic artists. Hey, that's too harsh. Don't judge people by your own standards. I never expected my fiancé to take Katie's side. I think that was when I realized that my relationship with Patrick was starting to fail. Our priorities and views on work were just too different. I should have been the one to end things quickly. But perhaps I still had feelings or thought the relationship could be fixed, so I couldn't cut Patrick off. Afterwards, Katie was removed from being David Stone's editor. It was because Mr. Stone had asked the chief editor for a change. But the chief editor didn't convey this to Katie directly. So she assumed I had badmouthed her to the chief editor. You are mean. I can't believe you told the chief editor. What? I just cautioned you, I didn't tattle. Then why am I being removed from my position? The fact that you're taking over proves it. Indeed, Mr. Stone had expressed his wish to the chief editor that he wanted me to take over. While I was thrilled by this, it only fueled Katie's belief that I was the reason she lost her position. Managing 4 comic artists seemed a bit challenging to me. So after discussing with the chief editor, we decided Katie could take over from a hitmaker comic artist. This artist worked with a production team handling tasks like gathering materials and managing events, and they never missed deadlines. So the main responsibilities of the editor were basically to pick up the manuscript and deliver snacks. I thought there wouldn't be any trouble with Katie handling it. Katie was happy, saying, "Maybe it's actually a lucky break." Mr. Stone wasn't making a splash, and many of my friends didn't even know his name. But now, I'll be working with a famous artist everyone knows. Her anger towards me seemed to disappear, but I was quite irritated on the inside. "I'm sorry if I caused trouble between you and your colleague by asking the chief editor." He apologized when I first showed up at his workplace after taking over. I didn't know how the word got out, but such news spreads fast. "No, I'm happy to be working with you. I'll work hard to make up for Katie's interference. Just let me know what you need." When I said this, he immediately asked, "I'm sorry to ask so soon, but could you find me an assistant?" I had asked Katie a while back. I couldn't believe the lack of work being done. I arranged for someone who could match Mr. Stone's drawing style and wouldn't disturb the workplace atmosphere. Mr. Stone was single, and meals during work were mostly delivered. So I arranged for someone who could cook, and I also cooked when I visited. Since he had no manager, I also took care of as much of the small administrative details of his daily life on his behalf as possible. You're a huge help. The materials you provide are perfect, and I've got much more time to draw now. I was pleased to be appreciated. Mr. Stone's work, though not flashy, had excellent artistry and a unique worldview with humor, attracting a core fan base. I was one of them. He was the type who wanted to spend time on his drawings, but was previously overwhelmed by trivial tasks and a shortage of assistants. Perhaps because he now had more time and less stress. The popularity of his serialized work increased, and I received praise from the chief editor. One day, Patrick said, "We need to talk," and I promised to have dinner with him. Do we talk about marriage? Or perhaps a breakup? Either way, I felt it was time to clarify things. However, when I arrived at the restaurant we had planned on, Patrick and Katie were sitting side by side, not opposite each other, which struck me as odd. I took the seat opposite them. "Jenny, I'm pregnant." She said this as soon as I sat down. "What?" "It's Patrick's baby." "What?" "What about the older guy you were dating?" "Oh, we broke up a while back." Katie said this as she snuggled up to Patrick, who was sitting beside her. "But I thought you weren't interested in guys your own age?" "I thought so too, but there's no reason for falling in love." "What?" Then Patrick said, I want to start a family with her." "So? Go ahead." "Huh? You can be family, whatever you want. If that's all you want to talk about, I'm leaving." As I stood up to leave, they both started apologizing repeatedly. "I'm really sorry about this." "Sorry, Jenny." Katie's smug face at that moment infuriated me. "It's fine. You two are perfect for each other." Then, with a look of self-pity, Patrick said, "What I've come to dislike about you is your condescension. Just because you're a bit good at your job, you look down on others." I didn't mean it, but that's how Patrick must have felt. I'm not looking down on anyone. I think it's a difference in the way you and I think about our work. That's why you two are perfect for each other. I left the restaurant with those words. I wasn't sad. I did feel frustrated. but more because I was outmaneuvered by Katie than for losing my fiancé to her. I should have initiated the breakup sooner. Remembering Katie's triumphant expression made me feel awful. Apparently, Katie plans to keep working even after getting married. While our editorial department doesn't meddle in personal affairs. Almost everyone knew I was dating Patrick. And then suddenly, Katie and Patrick got married. People love this kind of gossip, and all sorts of speculation were flying around. I became known as the woman whose fiancé was stolen by a supposed close friend. I don't recall ever becoming close friends with Katie. But she must have been spreading all sorts of stories. I knew he was her boyfriend, but I fell in love. It just happened. She supposedly said, playing the tragic heroine. But it wasn't just Katie. Patrick too had been saying Jenny's treatment of Katie was terrible. Seeing that drove me away, and I felt I had to protect Katie. It seems I was painted as a detestable woman who harassed her close friend. Katie, over work issues, stole the comic artist she was in charge of. And was dumped by her fiancé for it. Well, those who know my work ethic probably didn't believe half of it, but I still felt uncomfortable. And I had to see those two every day. Jenny, I'll give you an invitation to our wedding. You'll attend as a colleague, right? When Katie handed me the invitation, I decided to quit. I won't be attending since I won't be a colleague anymore. Saying that, I submitted my resignation letter to the chief editor. The chief editor tried to persuade me to stay, suggesting we talk in a private room. I love this job, and I love the comic artists I work with. But it's become too difficult to continue working here under these circumstances. Then the chief editor said to me, "To be honest, losing you would hurt more than losing those two. Won't you reconsider?" Of course, it appeared that those two were not very well regarded. I appreciate your kind words, but I think I need some time to relax my mind and body. I declined the offer. I visited each comic artist I was in charge of to inform them of my resignation, bringing gifts. They were all disappointed. And some said they'd like to work with me again if I ever moved to another publishing company. And they finished their current series. Mr. Stone felt guilty for being part of the reason I was leaving and apologized so much I felt bad. I was really happy to work with you, so it's a big disappointment for me. I truly felt that way. His popularity was finally increasing, and I wished I could have continued to support him more. Then Mr. Stone said, If you don't already have plans for future work, I was wondering if you might consider doing something like a manager for me?" "What?" "Ever since you took over, work has been so much easier for me. I've gotten used to it, and I don't think I can manage without you. I can offer you the same salary you're getting now. But if you were getting a lot more, I might not be able to match it." His invitation was awkward but sincere, and he was a comic artist I greatly admired. "Of course. If you think I'm up to the task, I'd be happy to help." And so, I became Mr. Stone's manager. The salary I was receiving was much less than Mr. Stone had expected, so there was no issue there. Mr. Stone might seem absent-minded at times. But he never compromises when it comes to his comic. Working together, it became evident how much he loves his craft and his own works. And I found myself liking him even more. The person who took over my former duties was a senior male colleague, who had helped me when I was new. I never imagined Jenny would become a manager. Mr. Stone's work has been even better lately, so it makes sense now. Keep up the good work. I won't say too much, but eventually, the editorial department will hear about you being here. In such a tight-knit industry, I knew this would happen, but it didn't bother me. I was focused on creating good work with Mr. Stone. One day, Mr. Stone said excitedly, "Hey, Jenny. Lately, girl characters have been gaining in popularity. It's thanks to you. Your advice really helped. In Mr. Stone's manga, I thought the boys were really cool. But the girls were somewhat lacking in personality. I really don't understand female psychology at all, so it's a huge help. This flirty character, for instance, I thought would be annoying. But it's fun to draw, and surprisingly popular. Right. In a comic book, the cleverness of the characters may be more poignant. In real life, I would hate it if I had one around me though. That character was modeled after Katie, our former colleague. Hearing this, Mr. Stone laughed heartily.
Ah.
I see. I see. That's her, as if he just understood a joke. This girl character is modeled after you, right? What? No, that's not me. She's more like an ideal woman to me. Is that so? I always thought this character resembled you and was lovely. That's why I put a lot of effort into drawing her. Really? I was touched to learn he saw me in such a way, and it made my heart race. Wondering how this was any different from a confession. Does that mean you think I'm lovely? Did I say that? Oh, I did say that. Sorry. Is that weird? Seeing him become embarrassed and downcast, I found him endearing. Not at all. I not only love your comic, but I also admire and like everything about you. Including your attitude toward work. Although Mr. Stone might look bearish, to me, he was far more charming than Patrick ever was. His comic sales were booming, and an anime adaptation had been confirmed. The media attention and interviews had increased. As his manager, these were happy problems to have. I had nearly forgotten about Patrick and Katie, but I had to visit the editorial office for some business. Right, they got married, didn't they? Thinking this, I went to the editorial department and saw Katie, now visibly pregnant. Long time no see. I greeted her cheerfully, but she just glanced at me and walked away. After delivering some documents related to rights to the chief editor and being invited for coffee, we moved to the cafeteria. It's been tough since you left. He sighed deeply. The hitmaker comic artist that Katie was in charge of got furious. What? That artist who would be fine no matter who was in charge. I was surprised. Despite being an exceptionally stable manga artist, who hardly needed anything beyond manuscript collection and occasional snacks. It seems she managed to upset the artist by suggesting a switch to digital art. Saying things like, "Why don't you work digitally? Everyone's doing it these days." I had to profusely apologize, and now I'm taking over. Katie is on document organization duty. Well, she's not exactly excelling at that either. But we can't just fire her for incompetence. She's fully intending to take maternity and parental leave, said the chief editor, sighing again. Patrick hasn't been getting great feedback either. I had him take over a veteran manga artist you used to handle. But comparisons with you are inevitable. Complaints about him not being attentive or slow at work keep coming to me, he said, his shoulders drooping. As much as I pity them, there's not much I can do. I was relieved to hear that the newcomers are being managed by a competent desk. Passing by the documentation room, I saw them chatting. Clearly not working. Patrick saw me, long time no see. You're doing well. Thanks to you. With the anime and possibly a game adaptation, it's been hectic but fulfilling. Patrick clicked his tongue in response. I couldn't believe I had once been engaged to such a man. Oh, by the way, I'm getting married to Mr. Stone. I'll be supporting him as both a manager and partner from now on. What? You're lying. Mr. Stone's been making a fortune recently. Katie reacted to that part, which was disappointing. Neither of them said congratulations. Instead, Katie complained, that was supposed to be my job. That's so unfair. I decided to fib a bit. Well, we're planning a lavish wedding and reception. For our honeymoon, we're thinking of a world tour, and we might buy a high-rise condo. I said, showing off a large gemstone engagement ring. The ring was the only truth, the rest were spontaneous lies. Though, they weren't impossible dreams. Seeing Katie's genuinely frustrated face was satisfying. David's that bear-like uncool guy, right? He said this out of spite. What a small man. He's a wonderfully talented bear. Much better than you could ever be. That was the truth. Well, I wish you both happiness. As I walked away, I could hear them bickering behind me. Later, Katie was apparently sued for compensation by the wife of the older man she had previously dated. Turns out, he wasn't single. Patrick was saying, the baby might not be mine, but we won't know until the baby is born. With their incompetence at work and lack of motivation, plus this scandal, you'd think they'd have a hard time staying at the company. But knowing them, who knows? Either way, I couldn't see a bright and happy future for them. A grand wedding, a world tour, a high-rise condo? Shall we go all out? Mr. Stone joked after hearing my story. You don't like being the center of attention, right? I'm drawn to the world tour idea. But I don't want to disappoint our readers by taking a long break. As for living arrangements, anywhere is fine by me. Got it. Then, after the current series ends, let's take a super long vacation and travel the world. That sounds great. We'll take lots of photos for reference. You're really the role model for all editors. But you can be a bit more selfish now that you're my wife, he said, offering more support than I could have asked for. Just creating worlds together in comics was enough to make me happy. If I got any happier, I felt like I might spoil. It's like a miracle. By the way, the family home of David Stone is a stonemasonry business.